Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Close Shave TV followers and all the viewers, inshallah, around the world. I have a prestigious guest with me today. In fact, I've been following him for a few years. He's been on the media a number of times, a spokesperson and an intellectual. Alhamdulillah, he is brother Arsalan Iftikhar, who is the founder of the Muslim Guy. Welcome to the show, Arsalan.
Thank you so much, Adil. It's an honor to be with you today.
Jazakallah khair, honors all mine. So, I mean, alhamdulillah, I know there's a lot to speak about you and your background. I don't want to go too much into it. You seem like a very humble individual, but yes, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, apart from being yourself the international human rights lawyer, fellow speaker at a number of universities, Georgetown, is it Washington, D.C., right? Mashallah, and also you've been on a number of television programs, a spokesman for many Islamic organizations, and you specialize also in Islamophobia, right? Hence your recent book about scapegoats. And again, yeah, this is a book. If you can just remind the viewers of the name of your book, and I'll encourage myself first to purchase and read it, and then the viewers too, inshallah.
It's called Scapegoats: How Islamophobia Helps Our Enemies and Threatens Our Freedoms.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And you know, I'm the forward is actually by is it Riza Aslan? Is it?
Yes. So my friend Raza on the New York Times best-selling author wrote the forward for Scapegoats. We were honored to have former President Jimmy Carter promote the book as well. You can find out more information at scapegoatbook.com. But yeah, it's it was a pet project of mine. Obviously, with the rise of Islamophobia all over the world. Actually, my next book that's coming out is also on Islamophobia, and so it's something that is going to be that we're going to have to deal with as a global community for the foreseeable future.
Okay, excellent, mashallah. Welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you. Mashallah, again, you got a lot of specializations from international law, Islamophobia, definitely, which we all know about, and I'm sure you, like myself, have been a victim of. But today we want to speak about being Muslim in the time of coronavirus. Okay, so the date today, so don't get it mistaken, we're 29th of March 2020. This is unprecedented times, man. People are just dumbfounded, they just lost, and governments are left crippled. Subhanallah, I mean, all I can say is, as a Muslim community here in the UK, I can share our experiences, but please tell me about the experiences for yourself personally and the Muslim community in the United States, please.
Well, I think that I think anyone can agree that we, as a human race, are entering uncharted territory. With the widespread growth and spread of COVID-19 coronavirus all over the world. It's impacted every way of life for all humans across the planet. I think for those of us who are in the 1.7 billion Muslim ummah in the world today, I think there is an added level of uncharted territory that we're currently entering. I mean, for people like you and I and millions of others all over the world, this is the first time in our life where we essentially have been forbidden to go to our mosques, our masajid for Friday Jummah prayers. We are going to be entering into probably the first virtual Ramadan ever, where we will again be forbidden from going to our masajid for Taraweeh prayers on a nightly basis, or even going to our friends and family's house for the iftar dinners. It's going to impact the ways that we donate our charity, our zakat, which many Muslims pay every single year during the month of Ramadan, because of the fact that Muslim charities all over the world, primarily in the West, are not holding their fundraising dinners because of the spread of coronavirus. And then obviously, looking a few months down the line, we've already seen the postponement of the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo for 1 year until the year 2021. And, something that Muslims might have to grapple with is the fact that that Hajj in the year 2020 might be canceled because of the fact that it just needs to be because you have the largest human congregation on the face of the earth. And so, these are the things that, I hope to talk with you today in terms of understanding a little bit more about what it means to be Muslim, in the time of coronavirus, and how we as an ummah and as a human race can, move forward, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you spoke about Hajj being potentially cancelled. I mean, I'd say even a week ago, or the discussion, definitely less than 2 weeks ago, the discussion was about Ramadan, praying in the masajid, in the mosques in Ramadan being cancelled, right? Not happening. And now we're already skipping 2 months ahead of that, 2.5 months ahead of that, and it's about Hajj being cancelled, which is, I'm pretty certain is definitely going to be the case, and it's unprecedented in our living memory. This is a generational change, man. It's a complete change, and apart from, I don't know yourself, I've heard so many different try to obviously get religious guidance. We've got the scientific, the medical guidance. Of course, we're all self-isolating, and as I mentioned to you earlier, I wasn't feeling well. I've been self-isolating for about 11 days now. Well, now obviously the new legislation is that the whole country needs to isolate and everyone needs to stay indoors anyway. And here we're only allowed out for shopping. We're allowed to go out for a walk or general exercise for 1 hour a day. We're not allowed to have more than 2 people in the gathering at the same time when we do go out, whether that be shopping or jogging, I guess. Or we can only go out for medical reasons, the hospital, or we got an appointment. That's it. And obviously the big issue here that we're having in the UK is only work which is essential work. We're in the food industry, so a lot of our clientele, 70% have closed down, but there are some that are still open. And for some of them, they just gone takeaway mad. Like, they're really busy, man. They're really busy.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's the same thing with you guys, right?
Well, it's both out though. It's usually like shopping malls that are ghost towns and restaurants who are clamoring for business. But then obviously, like you said, delivery and takeaway, rates have gone up as well. There, at least here in the United States, there have been some estimates that 20 to 30% of small businesses might not survive this, for the next couple of months. There are estimates here in the U.S. that we could reach unemployment rates of 28% nationwide, which is absurd. I mean, it's at about 3.5% right now.
Wow.
So we're going to be dealing with the sort of the economic repercussions of this for a very long time. There's going to be a new normal, and it's something that we all have to become more aware of. The vast majority of people here in the United States are, for those people who have white collar jobs, are all working remotely, right? And so you obviously see, the stock prices of like companies like Zoom and WebEx and other teleconferencing companies, shoot through the roof.
Of course.
And so the entire landscape is going to. This is a seismic event. This is something that's quite seismic in terms of the impact that it's going to have, and it's going to have a huge impact on the Muslim world, not only for the Western diaspora, for people like you and I in the West, but also in many parts of the Muslim world as well. It's a lot. I've been hearing. I hear from a lot of sort of devout Muslims who are almost insistent upon going to the mosque, to the masjid, and people don't understand the real life impact that this has. There is. The New York Times actually recently reported that a large gathering in Malaysia, a large Muslim gathering of the Tablighi Jamaat, of 16,000 people in a large mosque in Malaysia, became the largest vector for coronavirus, where people from the Tablighi Jamaat Muslim gathering in Malaysia spread corona and COVID-19 to 6 Southeast Asian countries. This has a real impact. There's a very famous hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he says, "Do no harm or reciprocate harm." And so, the do no harm is something that is central to the Hippocratic Oath that doctors take all over the world, and it's about forget the obligations that we have as Muslims. The first obligation that we have as a Muslim is to do no harm to ourselves or other human beings. And so it's not just Muslims. For example, in South Korea actually had the second largest outbreak of COVID-19 after China. And they found that the largest vector in South Korea was from a church gathering that happened after South Korean government had actually called for self-isolation. Even in Singapore, they found that the largest COVID-19 cluster there was because of a church gathering. So these are, religious congregational gatherings. Obviously we're not, focusing just on Muslims, but in any place where there are a large group of people in close proximity to one another, obviously you and I both know when we go to the masjid, what do they say? Shoulder to shoulder,
feet
toe
to
to
feet,
toe.
shoulder to shoulder.
You can't get closer than that.
And that's after you've hugged and kissed everyone, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's something that it can have a life and death impact on people, and so we as Muslims should be aware of that. The mantra of do no harm is essential to the Islamic ethos.
Of course. That mantra and hadith that you mentioned, la darar wa la dirar, and that is a beautiful hadith, and it's it's the kind of the quintessential Islamic message in Sharia. In fact, one of the principles of Sharia, protecting the 5 maqasid of Sharia, which they say, if I can remember correctly, the higher objectives of Sharia, which is hifdhul deen, the protection of the deen, hifdhul nafs, the protection of your life, most importantly, hifdhul al-aql, your intellect, your sanity, al-mal, your wealth and possessions, and al-ird, your family, I guess, and your kith and kin. But you gave the example of Tablighi Jamaat and also the church in South Korea. Now that's just taken as like a pilot test, right? And clearly that you now on a macro level, Hajj, for example, the Hajj pilgrimage. I mean, impossible, man, impossible.
It's the largest annual human gathering on the face of the earth. You have people from every single one of the 200 nations on the planet congregating in one place, again in close proximity. From sleeping in tents in Mina to doing the Jamarat, to doing the Tawaf, where people are literally stampeding over one another. Laughing aside, like it's a public health crisis.
Yeah, it is definitely.
And at the end of the day, Allah is kind and just, and He wants us to use our aql, right?
Of course.
In terms of our wisdom, in terms of are we going to have a shallow understanding of our faith, or are we going to have a real deep one where we will create that connection between ourselves and our Lord, regardless of whether we're praying in our bedrooms, in our homes, or in our mosques and masjid.
I mean, saying that, I think as an analogy, if you see this kind of response in terms of the Islamic establishment, whether it be the political, especially the religious establishment of all the different Islamic organizations around the world, from anyone that I can think of, from the local ones here in the UK, Muslim Society of Britain, Muslim Council of Britain, for example, all of them, they said, okay, masajid, mosques, they got to close, to international ones, to the bodies, the ulama bodies in Saudi Arabia, to Al-Azhar as well, in Egypt, as we know of. All of them have unanimously said, okay, you cannot go to the masjid anymore, from what I know, right, and from what I've... but the practice, it's the same thing.
Lining up.
So
what are you doing?
It goes back to that same thing. The religion says one thing, but the people bloody do something else, right? So you got Islam, and you got the Muslims with the Muslims. Well, we are who we are, and they are who they are. And unfortunately, it's just, you're gonna get it. It's a people problem, man. And we've had videos going around, even on Friday, just gone a couple of days ago, of certain masjids are open. I
saw those videos on my WhatsApp.
Here local in Birmingham.
And it's in the UK. It's not even. We're not talking about in the in the villages of like Pakistan or Syria or Bangladesh
of course.
Ethiopia. This is like
and people think it's a matter of iman and kufr, belief and disbelief. It's not.
It's absurd.
The irony is what they deem as being kufr, disbelief, is actually in fact part of your iman, right? Because the religion places heavy emphasis, from what I know, what I've studied, on the protection of of the self, of the soul of the human being, and it's a tough one. People are gonna be emotional about it, man. Though, aren't they? I mean, it's unprecedented. To not go to the masjid. It hurts. It hurts me, man.
Listen, dude. I'm like, Ramadan is coming up now in what 24, 25 days, and I am like preemptively saddened and preemptively depressed about not being able to go to Taraweeh every day.
Exactly.
Right? But you just have to come to terms with it, right?
Yeah,
we have to come to accept that, the greater good is served by us not doing something, right? Oftentimes we think that the greater good is always done by doing something. We don't ever think that by the by the absence of action, or can the greater good
of course
be had.
I mean, that's another discussion as well, as in like, what are our plans? What are your plans for Ramadan, right? I mean,
it's to wake up for suhoor every morning. It is to pray. It is to break my fast with my wife. It's to pray Taraweeh at home. Eid, we're gonna have our first virtual Eids. We're gonna have Eid Salat, where people are following along on their iPad or on their computers, to celebrate Eid.
We're
not people to visit with our families,
of course.
In gatherings. This is real, and that's fine, and that's why we entitled this video, Muslim in the time of coronavirus.
Yeah.
Because these are the conversations that Muslims should have with one another in terms of how do we deal with this as a global community.
Yes.
And letting people know, most importantly, Adam, that they're not in this alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That obviously we know that our local communities, everybody's not going to masjid, things like that, but that this is a global conversation that Muslims are having, across oceans, like you and I. Across continents, that this is something that we all have to deal with. But again, we're dealing with it together as the Ummah in the year 2020.
Yes,
right?
yes.
1.7 billion of us, in the year 2020, every single Muslim on the face of the earth is going to be dealing with this together. In 20 years, inshallah, if Allah gives us life, you and I will be like, hey, remember when Hajj was canceled?
Yeah.
Right?
It's
surreal. Inshallah, we can use this as a sort of a cohesive, event to help, galvanize us and hopefully strengthen our faith, but also strengthen our ability to serve humanity.
You're right. I mean, it's very surreal right now, and it is surreal without a doubt. And I think time always tells. And as time will go past, whether it'll be a year, 6 months, whether it'll be 2 decades, like you said, we are going to look back. And we're going to go, wow, remember when that happened? You know what I mean? Remember when the whole world had that pandemic and Hajj was cancelled and we weren't even going out for work? And, subhanAllah, it's what's very difficult, though, is to not get drawn into the whole conspiracy theory kind of, like, madness. Oh, God, it's, what's going to happen? And they want to vaccinate us all. And, we're next in line. And they want to get rid of... paper money. They want a paperless currency in society. So how do you stay sane, man? Right? That's what I want to know.
The way you stay sane is by not following social media, not following WhatsApp. The WhatsApp conspiracy, stratosphere is something that sadly is actually bringing a lot more heat than it is light. You get these forwards from Muslim aunties and uncles all over the world saying the true cure for COVID-19 is to hold your breath for 10 seconds or to say this prayer or to eat a lot more black seed. And we have to listen to medical experts.
I've just had some black seed, by the way, but anyway.
I do too on a daily basis, but not for that reason, right?
Of course.
We have to trust but verify. I'm a journalist also, right? I'm a lawyer and journalist, and so I always tell people, whenever you get a forward, whenever you read a story, verify it. Don't automatically assume that just because you see something on your phone or in your social media and you see that it is actually true. It takes about 10 seconds of Google to literally verify whether something is fake or true.
So it's even easier for us to verify now in today's age of social media and the internet, man. It's so much easier, right?
And what I always actually tell people to do, Adil, is actually when you get something that you don't recognize, I actually suggests that as a default, you should probably assume that it is false until it is proven true.
Right.
So unless it's from a trusted news source like the BBC or the New York Times or Associated Press or The Economist or, all these things, if you're getting a random forward from, a WhatsApp auntie, assume that it's fake. Right? And
by
so you
default.
go to Google, type in a few keywords. You'll be able to tell whether the World Health Organization.
Yeah, exactly.
Your Muslim auntie Shagufta said it.
That happens to the best of us, I think, to be fair. But you reminded me of a verse from the Quran there when Allah says, إِذَا جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. When a fasiq or a flagrant kind of sinner comes to you with a piece of information, then clarify it, and that, as a general rule of thumb, obviously you don't want to always see someone as, you don't always want to be skeptical. But there is a level of, taking everything with a pinch of salt, man. Definitely.
Yeah, we need to tie our camel, so to speak.
Yeah, precisely.
We need to tie our camel in a multitude of ways. But sadly, in today's world, with everything that's going on, it feels like our camels are all running around, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, tying our camel could be, self-isolating with your family. Tying your camel could be verifying any news that you read. Tying your camel is actually a very profound, adage. It's something that we can use in every aspect of our life. That's a practical application of our Islamic faith, right? At the end of the day, we can talk in esoteric, theological, fiqh discussions, but I like to talk about the way that Islam impacts us as Muslims in the year 2020, right? We're not in the year 1900. We're certainly not in the year 700.
Yeah.
How do we as millennial Muslims today, Muslims living in the millennium, dealing with social media and 24/7 news cycles, how do we deal with the impact of everything on our faith and how we practice it today? Now, technology has helped a lot of the ways that we practice our faith. So one of the things that also is going to have an impact that you and I were discussing off camera before we started here today is obviously not only in Ramadan, but also charity giving. Obviously, as many Muslims give their annual zakat charity during the month of Ramadan.
Yeah.
But a lot of them also, predominantly in the Western diaspora, tend to do that during fundraising dinners.
Yeah.
For some charities. Well, those fundraising dinners aren't happening. So what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to now go online.
Yes.
Right? How do you find these charities to donate online? Are there, there's a great Muslim crowdsourcing platforms like launchgood.com, that'll host a multitude of Muslim charities and their ability to give. How do Muslim charities navigate this new space? I actually am a brand ambassador for a charity called Penny Appeal USA. It's actually
I know Penny Appeal very well. Yeah.
So and what we do, every year, I actually traveled to Pakistan to film videos at an orphan village there. And I was actually supposed to travel there. I was actually supposed to be there 6 days ago.
Okay.
But we had to cancel the flight because of COVID-19. But now, we have to still, we're doing our campaign for Ramadan. How do we create the Launch Good page? How do we create the videos? How are we making sure that we're still able to raise the money that we do on a yearly basis? Based on the fact that, brand ambassadors can't travel there. We're not having fundraising iftar dinners. And so people have to navigate these things to say, okay, where can I give my zakat to this year, right?
Yeah.
If I have 1,000 or 5,000 pounds or dollars to give, I can go to launchgood.com, I can go to Penny Appeal's website. I still need to give, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course. But the question is but you'll give an example of these kind of practical kind of obstacles that we're now facing. You as an ambassador doing a video and stuff, but the question essentially is those that actually distribute it with their hands, right, to purchase the goods and give the actual aid, whatever it may be, whether it be the food, whether it be the clothing, who's going to do that because of the whole self-isolation?
You're right. The answer is I don't know. Anybody who says that they know the answer to anything is a liar.
No.
We have to be humble with ourselves to again, like I said at the beginning, this is uncharted territory, right, for the human race.
Yes.
But we need to make sure that our Muslim charities have the funds to be able to operate. I mean, we Penny Appeal operates, an orphan village, orphan homes for 100 to 200 boys and girls across Pakistan. We provide their we provide their daily sustenance. We pay for their full-time foster mothers to live with them. We provide for their schooling and tuition. We have a full office in Pakistan and other African nations. We have an orphanage in Gambia in Western Africa as well. Our Muslim organizations are not stopping because of COVID-19, and obviously may Allah protect and bless everyone who is doing this work.
And
is in harm's way. Our Muslim doctors in the West.
Yes.
Today I heard that 3 British Muslim doctors passed away.
Because
of COVID-19. In the United States here, some estimates find that Muslim doctors are about 5 to 10% of doctors in America.
Wow.
And these people are, on the front lines of not only having to combat and comfort the people who are dealing with this, but they're exposing themselves as well. And so we have to, have these conversations and understand that, we can go to our masjid to do, Jummah or Taraweeh during Ramadan, but there are literally people who are risking their lives every day. Grocery workers. Honestly, anytime I go to the grocery store, I'm marveled at these hourly workers who even though they have gloves and masks on, like they're
exposing themselves, man.
Every day, and we're so ungrateful, and that's things that we have to be grateful for, the lives that Allah has given us. For the most part, we live charmed lives, right? If you live in the West, we still we're wealthier than 98% of the world's population. And so, we can self-isolate ourselves. We can, get some, Doritos and, ice cream and stock up. And,
order your halal, guys.
Well, you know what I mean. Right? I'm letting my American Muslimness come out here. But, this is, like I said, this is uncharted territory. If we as a Muslim Ummah do not come out of this more modest, more humble, then we've missed the plot entirely.
Well, I mean, it's funny because you mentioned the 3 doctors. In fact, before I move on, just to pay homage to them, and we can make remember them in goodness and in du'a. The names, I do have the names. The names were Dr. Amjad Al-Hawrani, Dr. Adil Al-Tayyar, and Dr. Habib Zaidi, I believe. They were names of 3 doctors. Subhanallah, that actually passed away here in the UK due to obviously being on the front line with the NHS in the hospitals trying to treat people with COVID-19, the coronavirus. They themselves obviously contracted it from the patients, and subhanallah, look, by the will of Allah, of course, they have now passed away. But they're heroes. These people are heroes, right? Every single one of them are heroes. MashaAllah.
These are, like I said, these are things that we have to we have to grapple with now, and so we have to be, if we as Muslims living in the year 2020 don't adapt and adjust, we're not only gonna lose our own faith, we're gonna lose our future generations. There are a lot of studies done in the West which show that younger Muslims in the West are not feeling engaged with their mosques and their Islamic communities. Fewer people are going to the masajid. Here, for example, here in the United States, we have about 7 to 10 million American Muslims that live here in the U.S., but some studies find that only 5% of us go to weekly Friday prayers. For those of us who go, we see the same people every week, and so it's that echo chamber confirmation bias. We automatically assume that all Muslims go to prayer when we're in the vast minority. And so at a time when people talk about dawah, we have to make sure that our own house is in order first.
No, right? That's very true. That's very true. Like I said, one of my episodes that I did well over a year ago now was with 2, as they call themselves, 2 ex-Muslims, and so this is an interesting kind of turn in terms of the discussion, because how is this all related? Well, it's related to the fact that how we respond as a religious community and what we take as our paradigm and an example, and then the religious advice as well that we're trying to act upon, it does have an impact on the Muslim community, the youth in particular, right? Because they're going to see us, are these people backwards? I mean, look at them, man. Everywhere's shut down, but you're still trying to go to the mosque to try and be holy. And in fact, what you're going to do, the verse from the Quran, if you save one life, is as if you save the whole of humanity. But then in the same token, if you take one life, it's as if you destroy the whole of humanity. So they may go with the good intentions, but good intentions are not enough. Then if you then carry you're carrying of the COVID-19, then you come out and you pass it on to someone else.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that.
One of the things that really sort of heartens me is, these sort of inspiring stories of what some Muslims are doing, to give back to their communities. And actually, yesterday, I posted a story on social media, which has gone viral now, about a young 7-year-old boy by the name of Zohaib Beg here in Ashburn, Virginia, who actually went around with his mom to local hotels and collected over 6,000 masks.
Wow.
And other sanitary products that he then donated to the local hospital here. 6,000 masks donated by a 7-year-old boy. That should put us all to shame.
Wow.
In terms of what we can do. That's Islam right there, right? He is a living, walking embodiment of the Islamic ethos of loving that God and loving that neighbor. Whatever we can do, in our own families, with ourselves, in our communities, is going to have that small impact. And if it's staying home and self-isolating, then that's your contribution.
Well, that's right? That's it. I mean,
if our contribution is having this discussion about being Muslim in the time of coronavirus and talking about these issues of Ramadan and Jummah and Zakat and Hajj and how we deal with that, then great. Let's start a conversation.
But that's the frustration as well, because from that young boy, and I think I do recall you sharing that story. Such an amazing child, like a philanthropist and altruist at such a young age. But then the idea, the practicality. But I want to do this, but should I go out? I've been told to self-isolate. How do I go out? I want to help someone, but I've been advised not to go out. So is it even practical for me to do so? I don't want to bring more harm than good. These are the questions that everyone's kind of thinking. But you're right, whatever we can do, whether it's maybe this discussion that someone else can watch, inshallah, whether they be Muslim or non-Muslim, and they can benefit from. Do you know what I mean? One of the things I've come across is kind of a recurring theme from amongst the ulama, and I try to take from different ulama. In fact, just before we started, I believe there was a really useful discussion happening, a dialogue between a sheikh here. We have Abu Isa Ni'matullah, and he's got a Zoom a Zoom talk conference call with Yasir Qadhi, Sheikh Yasir Qadhi. And they were having some real deep discussion, man. But obviously, I thought, well, I need to now speak to Arsalan. This is more important right now. But again, these are the things. And the recurring theme that I've come across with these scholars is, for example, a lot of the Mauritanian shuyukh and ulama, for example, and Syrian scholars, they speak about al-akhdhu bil-asbab, al-akhdhu bil-asbab, taking the precautionary measures and to do so as if they are everything. But relying, and then tawakkul ala Allah, and then relying upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if there is nothing but that. So the idea is you take the precautions, and in fact the other scholar says if you don't take the precautions, it's actually sinful, right? But if you completely rely on the precautionary measures, i.e. the medicine and whatnot, then that in a form is going a bit into theology now. This is my field. That in a form is a form of shirk, meaning you don't want to completely rely on it as if it's everything. So you got to have that balance. Yes, you do that, but also know that قُلْ لَنْ يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا. Say that nothing will befall me except what Allah's written for me. But we need to have that balance. You know what I mean? You can't have one or just the other.
You're right, but let's also be honest that the vast majority of the Muslim Ummah, particularly in the West, actually really in the world, has a very shallow understanding of religious literacy. Right? So here you have two scholars who are sort of dissecting the minutia of usul al-fiqh. Most people don't, most people...
They don't know that.
They have no idea. Mm-hmm. So that's why, the one thing I've always said from the beginning of my days, and I'll say this until the end of my days, is that I am not a religious scholar. I have never claimed to be a religious scholar. But what I can do, and I think inshallah, have done this decently well, is I can articulate the mainstream understanding of, the mainstream school of thoughts of Islam to a general public. I can serve as a microphone, as a megaphone.
A translator.
I can dumb it down so to speak.
Yeah.
When people speak to me, I like when I like when people dumb it down. I'm not an expert in medicine, so my wife is a doctor.
Mashallah.
So when she has, becoming an expert on this, and so I ask her a lot of things, and then a lot of times I say, hey, listen, you're talking to a layman here. Please dumb it down.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm talking to an IT person,
yeah,
I'll be like, dumb it down.
Yeah.
I'm a lawyer, right? My job when I go on television is to explain very complex international issues.
Mashallah.
But I dumb it down. Like you have to make people understand things in a way that is that they can engage with, that they can understand. And so, like I said, I think we're missing the plot if we're sort of dissecting the minutia of this. At the end of the day, it's all about tying our camel, right?
Yes.
We, as Muslims, we believe in Allah.
Yes.
And our tawakkul is only in Allah, and we have to tie our camel and self-isolate, or if you have a cough, drink cough syrup, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
It's at the end of the day, we all know that, you and I both know that Allah is the ultimate judge of anything.
Yes.
Neither I nor you can judge anybody else's Islam, their deen, whether or not people are, going to be
righteous or not.
Safe.
Yeah.
But like I said, for those people who have a slightly higher understanding of the faith, they tend to sort of get immersed in that minutia. And so, like I said, the reason that I was really looking forward to having this conversation is that I wanted to speak as two Muslims, right? As two believing Muslims who have a good understanding of our religious faith. But we also live in the real world, right? We also live in a world where we have to deal with Muslims who don't have the same level of understanding. We have to deal with non-Muslims. We have to deal with the outside world. And we have to navigate as Western Muslims, right? That's the one thing that we have in common, is that we have to navigate being believing Muslims in societies where we are not only the minority, but in many cases we're the demonized minority, right? So we have to operate and navigate ourselves as believers in a demonized minority in Western societies, and do so in a way that is positive, that is Islamic, but is also proud, right? That is not compromising.
Of course.
In our beliefs. And so that's why, like, when people watch this video, inshallah, I hope that we're providing them with that camaraderie. I want people to be like, wow, these are some of the things that I've been thinking about. And I'm glad that people are talking about it, right? And they're talking about it not in a theological concept. Like, you're sprinkling things here and there, I'm sprinkling things here.
Of course.
But we're talking about it in terms of practical, real life.
Of course.
Every day, from the most sort of cultural, non-practicing Muslim to the most sort of orthodox devout Muslim. And everybody in between, they can have an understanding. Of
course, because the reality is, Muslims are not one monolithic group of people where you just have hyper-religious or you just have hyper-liberal. We come in all shapes, colors, and forms, man.
We're as normal and screwed up as everyone
exactly, else. Yeah. And it's funny you said, I think one of your interviews I saw, you said that to someone where just you find someone as normal or as screwed up as anyone else. And it's just so true, man. It's just so true. But sometimes
a lot of the Islamophobia that we see today in the world is because people see us as other, as different, right?
Yeah.
And when you let people know that we're as normal and screwed up as everyone else, that's something that that humanizes people. That humanizes us to people in a way that most of the public opinion polls done about Muslims and Islam and Islamophobia after 9/11 in the last 20 years pretty much say that the vast majority of people in the West, about 70% of non-Muslims, say that they feel Islamophobia because they claim that they don't know any Muslims in their everyday lives. Even though their doctor is probably a Muslim, their mechanic is probably a Muslim. But when people say they know a Muslim, then the levels of Islamophobia plummet. And so it's about getting to know each other.
It's the ta'aruf and the basic understanding, get to know one each other, man. That's it, And, this, you remind me of the verse in the Quran where it says, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارُفُوا. We made you into different nations and tribes so you get to know one each other, right? إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. Verily the most noble of you in the eyes of Allah is the one that has the most taqwa, consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And, but what you said there about humanizing, and, I know this is your specialization, mashallah, which is brilliant, Islamophobia. Not that Islamophobia is brilliant, but 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 the specialization, it's helpful. You're a big help. But linking this now to Islamophobia somehow. I don't know if you've seen these messages and some of the articles and even certain talks about, well, here Boris Johnson called a lot of Muslim women that wear the niqab letterboxes or mailboxes, letterboxes, right? Now, the idea that everyone's been told to wear a veil and cover up, right?
Laughter aside, one of the things that's really been troubling to not only me but some people that I know is, you and I were speaking about this before the taping today, is that if you look at a lot of the media coverage for coronavirus, strangely, a lot of these stock photos that you see are of either Muslim hijabi women or of mosques being fumigated, which is funny that they're trying to sort of subconsciously tap into that Islamophobia by correlating COVID-19 and Muslims. Last week, The Economist magazine actually had an article, which I'm sure you saw, which was talking about so-called jihadism in the Maldives and how that is more
of a danger and threat
more danger than COVID-19.
COVID-19,
it's just like WTF, mate. It's like,
WTF times two.
You can't give us stock photos when you're talking about positive stories, but a story that we again have nothing to do with.
No,
you're again subliminally sending the message. You have these hijabi women wearing these masks. You have the fumigators, inside the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, Turkey. Again, you're sending these subliminal Islamophobic messages.
Of course.
And this is sort of the new landscape that we're dealing with today.
Well, I mean, look, this is it. The idea of Islamophobia. It's as if the corporate media and those kind of powers that do control the corporate media, they don't want people to forget the real quote unquote threat, which is always going to be terrorism, Islamic terrorism, Islamists, and all the other jargon and terms that they've come up with in the last 2 decades, and you're right, and it's always going back to what's happening in the Muslim world, or like I said earlier before the interview, Muslims, we provide excellent B-roll, for a lot of the news reports. Just put a sticker hijabi in there, stick a big bearded angry looking fellow in there, and that will kind of make sense to everything, right? But it's sad.
I don't know if they think of the word quarantine, and they're like, well, that sounds kind of like Quarantine.
Yeah. One of the brothers changed it to Quran time.
Right?
Quarantine, Quran. And look, the irony. I mean, look, the 3 doctors we just read out, subhanallah, who passed away within the last 2 days, were all Muslims, and they're fighting on the front line in NHS to save lives. And they're not looking at, like you said, the Hippocratic law. They're not looking at whether it's a Muslim or non-Muslim patient. That's a human being, a patient. They're doctors. They're there to do their job, and they
martyred themselves.
And they're basically martyrs. And inshallah, we know from the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who dies in such an epidemic or plague, that inshallah, they will be shaheed and martyrs, and I think they are without a doubt. And look, even though we're this idea of a minority, but the beautiful examples are always coming out in terms of, we've seen, I don't know, you gave the example of that young child, the 7-year-old, buying the masks and distributing to the hospitals. We've got obviously people here as well, like restaurants and stuff. They're making a lot of food and pizzas, and they're dropping them off to the nurses in the local departments here, stuff like that. So alhamdulillah, that's always there. But, one of the things I want to touch upon is, from what I've seen in a couple of your interviews as well, this having to always explain how good we are. For me, it gets tiring. Like, we don't want to be apologetic, but at the same time, the other side is, it's like we're overly trying to compensate by showing how good and nice we are and how much we're giving back. And the typical thing that you mentioned, for example, you do on a historical thing. We mentioned, look what Muslims contributed to mathematics and Khwarizmi and algebra, Gibran, etc., science, Ibn Rushd, Averroes, medicine, and then you bring it to examples you just mentioned now. But they still go on deaf ears. How do you deal with that, man? Doesn't it get a bit exhausting that, I'm sick of trying to justify that we're just like anyone else, man?
Yeah, that's why I'm 42 years old looking like I'm 65.
No, man, you got a baby face, bro. You just got grey hairs. It's nothing.
The reason that this is an important question is because, again, of this sort of Islamophobic trope in the West that Muslims don't condemn terrorism. You know, and whenever I get that question, I always tell people, I'm like, listen, I said this on TV, and I've said this for years, and I'll say it until the day that I die. If you type the words Muslim condemn terrorism into Google today, you'll receive 1.9 million results.
Whoa.
So if you don't think that Muslims condemn terrorism, you don't know how to use a computer. But the people who are saying this, for them, it will never be enough for Muslims to condemn terrorism. Now, for you and I, we obviously know that there's nothing in our faith that would condone the taking of any single human life, just like there is in any other religion in the world today.
Hello.
Especially in the media in the West. And so we have to understand that this double standard is going to be in play it's a generational issue, right? We're going to have to deal with this for generations to come. But, you know, you have to be able to answer things in a way that will resonate with people, right? So if you tell people, I'm not going to answer that question, then they're not going to listen to anything else that you have to say. If you address their question head on and then pivot to the other parts, the other points, the other questions that you want to answer, people can no longer say that you haven't answered their question. So again, it is sadly, it's a necessary evil, right? Again, it's not something that you have to deal with on a daily basis because being a media personality is not your line of profession. Sadly, it is my line of profession. And so with that, I have to deal with that. And it's a necessary evil that I understand because at the end of the day, I have to understand things from the perspective of someone who's not like me, right? Just like we want people to empathize with Muslims and be able to put themselves in our shoes, so too must we as Muslims be at least willing and able to put ourselves in other people's shoes also to be able to understand things. I mean, imagine for a person who knows nothing about Islam or Muslims, that your entire life, all you've been hearing, the meta-narratives that you've been hearing about Muslims are terrorism, bad, terrorism, bad,
violence.
Bad. Well, even if you're not a bigoted human being, you're going to have a negative bias naturally about Muslims. I always tell people, this is a joke that I have with some of my Muslim friends, especially whenever there's, an act of terrorism somewhere. I'm like, listen, man, I love Islam. I love Islam, but I cannot stand Muslims sometimes, right? And that's the thing, is to be able to differentiate the religion from the human beings who are practicing that religion, right? Like nobody would say Christianity is blank, or Judaism is blank, or Hinduism is blank, right? Islam, sadly, today is the only religion where people are willing to sort of offer those sort of monolithic Islam is blank statements.
Yes.
Because of that, for those of us who Allah has given a voice, in the public arena in the world today, it's our job to be able to serve as one of the diverse voices, for Muslims at a time where, many of our own religious, I don't know about you, but there are a lot of religious scholars that I wouldn't want to go on television to be able to explain things because they talk about things in their esoteric
way.
Ivory tower ways. I don't want an academic to go on television, a professor necessarily to be able to, again, talk about, 14th century Andalusian history in Spain. Nobody cares about that.
No one cares about that, no.
We nobody cares. Like, at the end of the day, we have to operate, nobody cares. You have to distill things in a very simplified soundbite sometimes and to show how it impacts other people, right? So a lot of times when I do media work, I always, I don't talk about, I say, listen, forget Muslims and Islam for a second. Imagine if somebody came to you and said that you are so-and-so, right? Or somebody said that, all Christians are like neo-Nazis, or all Christians are like the Ku Klux Klan here in the United States. People would obviously be offended at that. Well, people so too when you say that all Muslims are ISIS or all Muslims are Al-Qaeda. Do we feel that same way? You have to you have to empathize. You have to say, listen, how would you feel, right? Yeah. It's only when people can sort of relate to something in a way, it's like asking all white British people, how would you feel if you were Tommy Robinson?
Yeah, of course. But your basic common sense and intelligence will be able to deduce that there is a a huge difference between such an ignoramus like Tommy Robinson and the rest of the British people. But like you said, we have to spell out the basics, the basic ABC formulas, man, to make people understand that, please, Islam does not equate terrorism, violence, and all the other evil things that make you shake in your home at night. It doesn't, you know.
No, it's not only that. There actually have been many media studies conducted in the West that show that the one thing that resonates the most with Western audiences, about 60 to 70% of them, are double standards. It's when you can point out that the way that you're treating me is a double standard to the way that people treat you or to other people. That's one thing that Western audiences will actually say, okay, I can buy that.
Because no one likes hypocrisy.
Right. So nobody wants a theological lesson. Nobody wants to know that Islam is one of the three monotheistic Abrahamic faiths. You know, that
Islam is peace.
They don't even know what an Abrahamic faith is. Right. Like I said, the religious literacy of the average person in the world is minimal.
It is. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
You're right.
But what you can do is you can say, listen, you can pull out the double standards, and that's when even like right-wing conservatives will have to concede points, right?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
And that's why, you know, even though, you know, I'm a leftist, Muslim, socialist, human rights lawyer, you know, that's why a lot of right-wing conservative media personalities respect me, right? Because they know that you know, they might not agree with me, but they know that, you know, this guy brings his A game.
But you can hold your own as well at the same time. But I think with your profession, your background, being a human rights lawyer, etc., you know, that's you're very eloquent, and your ethos, but you're very eloquent, and you're you're an orator naturally, mashallah alik. And people like yourself are very important in communicating and conveying that message and argumentation. Someone like myself, maybe I could do it if I do a bit more training, but would I have the patience that you have? I don't know, because it requires a lot of patience, I imagine.
In Allah sabirin. One of the things, I think the one thing that gives me an advantage as a human rights lawyer is that I always frame any issue, whether you're dealing with international law, you're dealing with terrorism, you're dealing with, you know, Geneva Convention, Islamophobia, racism, hate crimes. I always bring everything back to human rights. Okay. Right? So human rights is the one thing that nobody in the world, no right-winger, nobody can say that human rights should not exist. And if you can quote from, you know, the United Nations Charter, the Geneva Convention, or the U.S. Constitution, or the Magna Carta, international law, people don't have much to say to that, right? It's hard to challenge established doctrines of, you know, normative legal rules anywhere around the world. You know, it is pretty it's pretty unanimous all over the world that torture is bad. It is pretty unanimous all over the world that slavery is bad. It is pretty, you know, synonymous all over the world that, you know, the treatment of religious minorities should be protected. Like all these things, you know, I think people are. I do, you know, there are not many Muslim human rights lawyers out there, but for the few of us that are out here, we do have the advantage in that because we can bring the law into it, as opposed in addition to ethics, I think really strengthens our points. And so, like I said, you know, and I deal with this especially a lot in the European context. Sadly, for the last 15 years, I've dealt with this a lot in terms of the hijab bans that have been happening all across Europe, from you know, France to Germany to other places, because it's a religious freedom issue, right? You know, the problem with the reason we're losing the hijab ban debate in Europe is because when Muslims make it a political debate, they're going to lose any day of the week, because Europeans, like most Westerners, don't like Muslims. But when you make it a human rights issue, when you make it a religious freedom issue, when you tell, you know, I've told the French ambassador to his face once that, you know, the hijab ban is in direct violation of the French Constitution, and I, you know, cited chapter and verse. I said article, whatever it was, and he had nothing to say. Because you can't say anything to something that's established. You know, the European Declaration of Human Rights, the EDHR, the UN Charter. You know, there's a multitude of... The
Magna Carta. I mean...
well, I wouldn't even have to go back there.
Yeah, but the point is, there's got to be a point of reference. And for us, we're too busy speaking about scriptures, religion, but you need to realize for people of secular background, modern, postmodern Europeans, and political thought, it's about the Constitution. And in the United States, you guys always bring everything back to the Constitution, right? When you can't agree on anything, well, this is what the Constitution says.
And honestly, Adil, that's exactly why we will never have a hijab ban here in the United States.
There you go.
For all of our problems, we have a billion of them.
Yeah.
For all of our problems, that is not one of them. And one of the primary reasons is the fact that, America's founding fathers were escaping religious persecution and they wanted religious freedom.
Precisely, yeah. So it completely contradicts it.
We have the true separation of church and state. Difference is that Europe has the separation of church. They want church to run away from state completely, right?
Yeah.
We have the separation. They have the free. They are completely averse to it. Here in America, it's like we will respect your religious beliefs, and it's going to be separate. In Europe, it's like we don't want you anywhere near us in the public arena, and that's
it's
why
a different kind of experience.
Hypersecularism, the laïcité that you see in France and many European countries.
Yeah.
That's why it resonates with me.
Well, I mean, that's why even in my own city here of Birmingham in the UK in the last 15 years, and especially in the last 7 years, we've had a huge number of French Muslims migrating from France to the UK. And for them, it's been like their minor, lesser Islamic hijrah, man. And a lot of them, and 99% of them that I know myself, personally, I'm good friends with, they've said to me, man, look, I mean, our wives, if they want to get a job, they have to take the hijab off. They can't wear a hijab. It's all for religious freedoms. The most basic, which is, I can't even cover myself and wear, they've got a problem even with the burkini, man. The burkini, for heaven's sake, right?
The burkini ban, I've done several television interviews with Al Jazeera English about the burkini ban, and when I was discussing it on Al Jazeera, the French government and the mayors in France who instituted these bans, they said that, it was to maintain public order and, not to offend sensibilities of people. And I said on air, and I said this to 76 million Al Jazeera viewers worldwide, I was like, I do not know how a bikini is any more offensive than a middle-aged French man's butt crack. On a French beach. It's not. It's absurd. That's ridiculous. You have to call out people's BS.
That's where. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, and that's where you pull out the double standards, right? Like that's where you become effective in messaging in the media.
Precisely.
When you call people's crap. When you say.
Well, that's another form of extremism to me, right? That's extreme secularism. That's a very extreme anti-theism.
But that's not going to resonate. When you talk it's secular, they don't care.
It's about human rights. It's about human rights at the end of the day, right?
Oh no, and forget the human rights. It's about the double standard. And when you point out the old, middle-aged French man's butt crack, that's when it'll hit. That's a rhetorical punch in the face.
Yeah, of course.
Right? You have nothing to say.
So you got to have a bit of tongue in cheek. No, definitely. It takes confidence to have that mindset and to be able to convey yourself.
It's intellectual jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, right? Basically,
we're dealing with intellectual jiu-jitsu here. And
precisely.
So that's something that,
you got your intellectual gloves out, and that's excellent. I like that about you, mashallah. And you're very good at what you do in that respect, mashallah. Allah give you more tawfiq and barakah and ability to continue doing that. One thing we're not touched upon, in fact, before I go into this, so we got now, because of this, the French community was quite large. So what's happened is they're mainly obviously Moroccan, Algerian heritage, some Tunisian, and they brought their own cultures with them. So you've now got major cities like Birmingham and London and Leicester, where you've got a lot of French Muslim migrants, and they have their own kind of schooling, some of them. I mean, they've integrated without a doubt. A lot of them didn't know any English, they've had to learn English. They've got their own little stores, they've got their own little patisserie shops and their croissants, and what they all complain about is how horrible the British food is and how horrible the cuisine is here. But anyway, everyone does that anyway. There's nothing abnormal about that. And how the weather's crap, which is true. The weather is crap here.
I mean, listen, and that's the diversity of Islam that we want people to see, right? We want people to see the diversity of Muslims anywhere in the world, right? We're not even talking. Forget religiosity, etc., but talk about the fact that we represent every one of the 196 countries on the face of the earth. That we have, African Muslims that were brought to the West, as slaves in slave ships over 500-600 years ago. That Islam is as native to the West as anything else.
Yes.
That we've won a plurality of the Nobel Peace Prizes in the last 10 or 15 years. That not only cook curries in London, but we, grill shawarmas,
Of
here
course.
in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
There's no monolith, right? Just like people, and that's
It's
what
not
you point out
monolithic.
double standard. You're like about anybody. You say, listen, just like you don't want anybody to view you as a monolithic entity, so too should you afford me with that same luxury and that same
Of
right
course, of
of
course.
not viewing things,
But
of viewing me as a monolith.
again, like you said, you got to give them benefit of the doubt. I mean, you can't blame them. I think if we were in their shoes as well, and we were basically non-Muslims, you're going to have this monolithic image that's peddled by the media, corporate media, because it's got a monotone, discriminatory kind of bias behind it, which is obviously, as we've discussed, Muslims are bad, evil, everything wrong in the world is Muslim, and this is it. And how do you fight that? And mashallah, you've given great examples of how we can do that. Are you actually part of an initiative where you're trying to train a lot of young Muslims here in the West, where you are in the States, to how to argue this case and how to kind of discuss and debate this?
Yeah, so I've conducted media workshops. I've given keynote speeches, both here in the United States and Europe and Great Britain, in London, and other places, about how people can essentially provide voices for themselves in their local media. Like I said, at the end of the day, I can't go on BBC World News every single night. I can't go on Agence France Presse, or I can't go on CNN or Fox News here all the time. And so what we really need to do is we need to train and empower our communities to help serve as voices. Because a lot of the times, listen, man, we live in a 24/7 news cycle, right?
Yeah.
Media outlets are always looking for news stories. They have to fill their airtime, right?
Yeah.
More often than not, when it comes to stories about Islam or Muslims,
they
don't really know who to reach out to. They'll call the local mosque, the local masjid, they'll never call them back. They won't even have a voicemail. The phone will ring, or somebody will pick up and never get back to them. I mean, we have to train our local communities, to not only know how to conduct interviews, but also proactively reach out to journalists, media outlets locally,
to engage,
to cultivate stories about Islam and Muslims outside of the usual, terrorist attack happens, go to the community for condemnation. Like proactive stuff about, Muslim soup kitchens that are serving homeless people, or Muslim doctors who are, serving in the NHS during the COVID.
The positive stories, right?
Those human interest stories, media outlets often look for, and it's yeoman's work. It's something that you sometimes take one step forward, two steps come back.
Of course.
We have to be proactive. We have to continually train our local Muslim communities. Like I said, I'm happy to come to communities all over the world to help provide these trainings. And so these are things that hopefully, inshallah, we can continue to do for the future generations.
Inshallah,
right? I believe personally that our niyyah, our intention, can only be judged as pure or sincere if we are looking for the fruits of our labor to blossom long after we have left this earth.
Yeah.
Right? So like for me at least, I want anything, if I've done any good, it's all Allah, it's not me. But if any sort of benefit comes from me, I want it to be after I have entered the grave. And that's my self-check on myself.
That's beautiful.
Right? We live in a very nafsi sort of narcissistic, self-centered world.
Me, myself, and I.
Most people don't actually know that I've actually turned down more television interviews over my life than I've accepted. Right? I've done thousands of them, but I've actually turned down several thousand. Because a lot of times either it's not the right place, it's not. It's like you don't want to. We shouldn't want to do anything based on our own sort of
ego
status, and sadly we live in that narcissistic world now, right? Where now, especially in self-quarantine, there are people who are reading verses from Hamlet, on Facebook Live because they want to feel seen.
Everyone wants to be the center of attention.
We feel like if we're not posting on Instagram, if we're not on Facebook or Twitter, that sometimes we don't feel seen. And so I want your viewers to know that that I see them all as part of my ummah, right? We're all ummatis together in the year 2020. This is something that on the day of judgment we're going to be asked about. Not only our response to coronavirus, but everything that's happened, like 9/11, from 9/11 onwards, that was a seismic event for the world. Especially for those of us who are of age and remember where we were.
I was
And more
17 at the time,
younger
man.
generations, like a lot of, I give a lot of speeches now where a lot of these college-age kids now, first years, weren't even born yet. Right?
Yeah,
so they were
yeah.
actually born into a post-9/11
Yeah, it's
world.
crazy.
So like imagine being born into a world that is Islamophobic.
Yeah, yeah.
As opposed to those of us, I was 24 when 9/11 happened.
Yeah, yeah.
Those of us sort of came of age during that, right?
Of
So
course.
Allah's going to ask us about these things in terms
Yes.
of what did you do
Yeah.
during that time that I gave you life here on this earth to make it a better place for everyone. Right? Not just for yourself, not just for your bank account, not just for your, your cars and your house. He's not going to ask us how much money we had in our bank account.
Yeah.
There's in all of my keynote speeches, I always remind people that, at the end of the day, in Urdu, there's a saying that kafan ke andar jeb nahi hote, meaning that burial shrouds do not have pockets. Meaning that any dollar, any pound, any dirham, any rupee that we have, not one of it will go with us when we've left this earth. The only thing that goes with us are our deeds and what we've done here. And so to give freely while you're here.
Mashallah.
Give until it's uncomfortable for you. That's why, when you and I were talking about zakat in the age of coronavirus, that's what, like, give virtually, give till it hurts. Understand that, we still live blessed, charmed lives. And Allah has still provided us with the sustenance. That none of us will get poorer by giving charity. As we all know as Muslims that never once
your wealth decreases. Ma naqasa malun min sadaqah, right? Your wealth does not decrease from sadaqah, definitely. And I'm glad you brought it there, because this is a beautiful segue that you brought it back to, being Muslim in a time of coronavirus, but you brought it back to the spirituality, the spiritual side, the ruhaniyat, if you like, and some people call tazkiyat an-nafs, the purification of the soul. Some people will call it at-tasawwuf, whatever you want to call it, right? But it's all part of the idea of God consciousness, that taqwa of Allah, and how you were saying that, mashallah, is very inspiring when you said that, how this is all going to be part of our legacy when we're in our graves, and definitely for yourself, inshallah, because it's about what is the intention. You always got to check yourself. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Verily, actions are according to intentions. So you're right, what are our intentions? And we do live in a time where it's all about the ego, me, myself, and I. Look how many subscribers I got and followers. I mean, I've been doing this for a few years, man. I've still not reached 1,000 yet, but it's like, and what? I stopped caring at a point. Well, listen, stop thinking about that. Just do, man. Just do. Do you know what I mean? Just do what you can do, and inshallah the khair will come, and just have the right intention. You know what I mean? Inshallah. And Allah will put barakah in it. And that's a lot of the times, that's how it is, alhamdulillah. But yeah, spirituality in times of coronavirus, COVID-19, very important. What are the there's a lot of takeaways from this. I can ask you some personal questions. I can see that you're quite spiritual and deeni, mashallah, and obviously that can mean anything, right? It's a very relative term. Did you kind of grow up in a religious household, or did you always have that reminders kind of from your parents, for example?
I did. One of the key things that I always like to tell people is that part of my job, or part of my calling, or whatever you want to call it, is that I want Muslims in the world today to be proud of their identity. That's it, right? However you define your Muslim or Islamic identity, I want you to be proud of it. I don't want you to shy away from it. I don't want you to be scared of it. I don't want you to be embarrassed by it. One of the reasons that my website is themuslimguy.com.
Of course.
And actually, that was actually a joke. What most people don't know is I actually started it as a joke in about 13, 14 years ago now. And, whenever I used to go on television here on CNN or Fox News, it was always a white conservative politician, and then I was always seen as the Muslim guy. So I was like, hey, I'll just get the Muslim guy. Cheek, right?
The token Muslim guy, right?
But the thing is that brand name stuck on me, right? So people see me on the street, they'll be like, hey, it's a Muslim guy.
Yeah.
Obviously, if I knew that it was going to stick, I would have probably picked something cooler than that. But the point there is that at the end of the day, I am a Muslim first and foremost. That is the most central aspect of my identity as a human being. And I want people to feel proud of their Muslim identity. I cannot tell you the multitude of stories after 9/11, especially in the last 20 years. My entire professional career as a professional Muslim. Where I've heard about Muslim women who, felt pressure to take off the hijab, or Muslim men who shaved off their beard, or people who sort of, they're like, oh, my name is Muhammad, but I'm like, not because of anything but fear.
Yeah.
Right? They might still be Muslims and practicing and believing, but it is when I saw people being scared to be Muslim, that is what inspired me to do my work. I want young Muslims all over the world to be able to, watch me and be like, there's a guy who's proud of his Muslim identity. And because of that, I feel a little more empowered as well. I mean, Muslim kids are getting bullied at an astronomical rate now, in the West. They're being called ISIS on the soccer fields. There are young Muslim girls that are having their hijabs pulled off. The one thing that's really devastating to me is in this last year alone, here in the United States, I've personally heard of at least a dozen young Muslim kids committing suicide. These are 9 to 12-year-olds. And it is because of it's because of how desperate they feel. People talk about, oh, we need to do dawah, and like, forget about converting people. We need to take care of our own. Like, we're losing an entire generation of our own young Muslim kids to ending their own life. Like, 9 to 12-year-olds literally hanging themselves. Like, it is beyond,
because of Islamophobia.
I'm sorry?
Because of the Islamophobic experiences?
Yeah, because they're being bullied at school and they just feel like the other, and for a multitude of reasons. Like, just the fact that they're feeling that, like
puberty, man, as well, everything, man.
It's like, when I say that we Muslims, we're human beings, right? So we're dealing with all the other issues, that everyone else deals with. We deal with people, we have drugs are an issue, divorce, sexual abuse, child abuse, like all these things. Like, we have to clean up our own house.
We got a lot of problems, man. And
we have no standing to be able to sort of point at other people and say, "Oh, that's the reason." That
not at all, man. We are not a monolithic community. We're not a monolithic faith, and we have problems. Like you said, we got normal people, and we got really ultra screwed up people too. And that really resonated with me when you said that. So it's really sad. It's quite sad, but I actually did a spoken word poem on this, and I've got it on my channel. And around the end of 2018, in fact, just about a year and a half ago, it was called Suicidal Muslims. I performed it specifically, the spoken word, and did a video with it as well with a very good friend of mine. Allah bless him, is a lovely brother and good school friend of mine, Jonathan Bartley. He's a lot of my background. In fact, growing up, I grew up and I still am in a very kind of white area, conservative middle class white area. But because of that growing up, and I went to normal white schools and stuff, because UK is not like the US, it's a very small country, man. But we have a lot of pockets of Muslim ghettos, but I didn't really grow up in these areas. So because of that, I experienced a lot of racism and white supremacy. And maybe that was my journey to why I became kind of more I started reading Malcolm X at the age of 16, 17, and then finally you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, you know what I mean? You know what that's going to lead to, right? So that was my self-awareness, alhamdulillah. But you're going back to this idea of suicidal Muslims. A very good friend of mine back in June 2012 actually committed suicide, unfortunately, and he was a Muslim. Allah forgive him and have mercy on his soul. And I think we need to be very, very careful when we judge people in such conditions, and hence why I felt the need and the urge to write a poem and then perform it as well. It's just to show the Muslim community that we shouldn't judge others.
Dude, forget about judging others. I mean, I'm really glad you brought this up. There have been masajid that have refused to bury Muslims.
Yeah, that's another. I've come across this problem as well.
Like, it's a stigma, not only of suicide, but mental health in general, right?
Yeah.
We have the stigma about mental health in terms of understanding that, we have to let Muslims know that it's okay to talk about mental health,
there's a lot
to
of
seek
people,
out professionals. That you should. But we have these stigmas, right? That people should sort of suck it up and they say, put your tawakkul in Allah.
Yeah, you'll be okay. Or if you're a true Muslim, you can't suffer from depression, have Muslim mental health issues. What a load of rubbish. And these are the things that I addressed in the poems. Like, please, these stupid kind of backward, archaic ideas, we need to really get rid of, man, and jettison it big time, because it's not helping us. And there are Muslims, we're talking about mental health now, how we've kind of gone on to another topic in the Muslim community. A huge problem now, there's a lot of people now that are, mashallah, from our community, that are going into the mental health profession and becoming counsellors and therapists and stuff, and psychotherapists. Yeah.
Because there's trauma. There's real trauma, right? Again, if you've lived as a Muslim, especially in the Western diaspora after 9/11, there's trauma there, right? And so,
big time.
The only way to deal with trauma, it's to, for us it was 9/11. For you guys it was 7/7 in 2000.
Yeah, of course. The backlash of that.
This is real, man.
Yes, it's real. And you're just looking at one aspect in terms of, you look at the byproduct, right? And if you like, the kind of the hangover of this kind of, kind of a generational kind of change and shift where a terrorist attack happens. But that's not even looking at all the other normal stuff that happens in our lives, right? From abuse to neglecting father or mother, for example, or an abusive parent, or bullying at school. That's not related necessarily to that. So you're dealing with that as a Muslim, and then you're dealing with just real life obstacles and real life challenges, man. So yeah, the mental health in the Muslim community, definitely. I'm glad you kind of touched upon that.
And that's why, especially in sort of this new age of social isolation, the people who already feel isolated are going to probably feel even more isolated.
Yes.
And so that's why, that's another reason I'm doing this conversation with you, is that I want people to reach out. People can freely connect with me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, on The Muslim Guy.
Yeah.
My DMs are open.
MashaAllah.
Like I said, my job as a professional Muslim is I like meeting my fellow Muslims. I don't want people to feel like they have an outlet. If I can help you, more often than not, I can put you in the right direction to people who can be a servant. We have to serve each other, right? At the end of the day, Allah's going to ask us on the day of judgment, the day of my judgment, the day of your judgment, the day of our judgment.
No.
What did you do?
Yes.
I gave you life. What did you do? And then none of us can say anything. I mean, I will say nothing. And my only chance at salvation is through Allah's mercy and grace.
Me too.
So,
all of us.
May Allah accept all. Any of our hisab. That's the thing that we nitpick everything as human beings, and so we need to be kinder to ourselves and those around us, and so. It's this is a conversation that we should continue to have.
Definitely. No, Jazakallah khair. And from the time that I've spent speaking to you, sorry to cut you off, I've learned so much off you. But the most important and the biggest takeaway that I feel that I've been impacted by is your humility. MashaAllah alaik. May Allah keep you humble all the time. How you seem like a very genuine and sincere individual, that you want to just help people, especially people from our community, which makes sense. And there's a saying in Arabic, saying, which is Sayyidun Nasi Khadimuhum. The Sayyid, the master of any people and qawm, is its servant. So by serving the community and by serving the people, you actually become the master in that respect. And subhanallah, and that's something, mashallah, I see you have these qualities, and Allah preserve you, and may you continue being a beacon of light and guidance, inshallah, and standing up for whether it would be our civil rights, whether it would be the individual Muslim, like you said, in this now at this time, people suffer from depression, isolation, they're feeling very lonely. It's not easy for anyone, Muslim or not, right now, right? So hopefully this can be some form of solace and a reminder to them to keep strong, and do whatever they feel they need to do. Speak to people, call someone, it's very important, because it's not easy. And read from the Quran, and read from these the dhikrs. What helped me out big time in terms of my journey of mental health as well is doing the dhikr and keeping on top of the dhikr, man. It's very important, alhamdulillah. And but yeah,
so much for having.
No, I really do appreciate it.
Like I said, if people have any questions, they can find me on social media at The Muslim Guy, or my website, TheMuslimGuy.com. You can email me directly. And so if they're interested in Islamophobia, they can learn more at scapegoatsbook.com.
Yes.
And I want to thank you again for your time.
No, thank you.
Allah bless you. And,
Allah bless you too.
Make it easy for us to be Muslim in the time of coronavirus.
I mean, and again, I was supposed to ask you at the beginning, and I just assumed you're actually based in Washington, right?
I am. I live in
you're based in
suburban Washington, D.C.
Alhamdulillah. And that's where you grew up, right?
I grew up in Chicago, Illinois, actually.
Oh, excellent.
So I'm a native of Chicago, but I've lived in Washington pretty much since after 9/11.
Okay, excellent. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Allah bless you. Jazakallah khair. Thanks a lot, Arsalan. It's been a pleasure. Seriously, I'm so glad that you could connect with us. It was such short notice, and I appreciate you're a busy guy. I've learned so much, and maybe we could do this again, maybe in a couple months' time. Don't know where we're going to be then, right? So, again,
it might be very here and there.
Exactly, there you go. And again, my viewers, inshallah, will definitely benefit from this, and I appreciate your time. And don't forget us in your du'as. And definitely, if I'm in the States and you're here in the UK, you're my guest, my friend. You're my guest, inshallah. Allah bless you. Take care, man. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right. Thank you very much.